Hello guys. In this lecture, actually we would be discussing a bit of theoretical portion related to deployment. So the first thing to know about deployment is that they are all about rolling updates and seamless rollbacks. At a high level, we start with pods as a basic Kubernetes object. We wrap them in replica set for scalability, resilience, and desired state. Then we add a deployment for rolling updates and simple rollbacks. The next thing to know is that they are fully fledged objects in the Kubernetes API. This means we define them in a manifest file that we feed to the deployment controller via the API server. So to recap, deployments manage replica sets and replica sets manage pods. Throw them into a pod and we have got a great way to deploy and manage Kubernetes app. Rolling updates the old way. Before we had deployment, we would deploy our apps via replication controller. To update the app, we would create a new replication controller with a different name and a different version label. Then we would do a kubeact1 rolling update and tell it to use the manifest file for the new replication controller. Kubernetes would then take care of the update. This process worked, but it was bit, not scalable, So for one thing, it all handled on the client instead of all the control panel. Also, rollbacks were a bit basic and there wasn't proper order trailing. Now, rolling updates with deployments. Deployments are better. With a deployment, we create a manifest file and post it to the API server. That gets even to the deployment controller and the app gets deployed on the cluster. Behind the scenes, we get a replica set and a bunch of pods. The deployment takes care of creating all of that for us. That means we get all of the replica set goodness such as background loops that make sure current state matches desired state, etc. You should not directly manage replica sets that are created as part of a deployment. You should perform all action against the deployment object and leave the deployment to manage its own replica sets. When we need to push an update, we commit the changes to the same deployment manifest file and repost it to the API server. In the background, Kubernetes creates a new replica set and winds the old one down at the same time that it winds the new one up. Net result, we get a smoother rolling update with zero downtime and we can rinse and repeat the process for future updates. Just keep updating that manifest file and that's it. Now, the first is the initial deploy to the cluster and the second is an update. These are two deployment versions. We can observe that replica set associated with the first one has been worn down and no longer has any parts. So replica set, associated with the second one is active and owns all the parts. So let's talk about rollbacks. The old replica sets stick around and don't get deleted. They have been worn down, so aren't managing any pods, but they still exist. This makes them a great option for reverting back to previous version. The process of rolling back is essential the opposite of a rolling update. We wind one of the old replica sets up and wind the current one down. Simple. Now, we already have spoken about the deployment portion or we would be discussing in the forthcoming lecture. So for that, I put in a separate lecture where I would be discussing it. So in terms of theory, I think that's it we have, for this lecture. We will continue with the next lecture on the next subtitle. Thank you very much.